In the past, I recorded a video on my experience of ADHD meds, more specifically methylphenidate, which is your Ritalin, your Equisim, your Concerta, your Medicanet, those kind of those are the brand names for that medication, methylphenidate. So I talked about my experience and how it seemed to take kind of the joy of the moment, that vibrancy, that bounciness, that impulsivity from me, um, and replace it in a sense with a more consistent temperament. And how that was sad, because that meant that vibrance, that bounciness, that impulsivity, that was a key part of my emotions. That was a key part of how I socialized, how I bonded, how I sought out and explored new things. That impulsivity would drive me to be creative, and when I would go out to try on different clothing styles, or to buy that weird little thing which actually could, spark a conversation, or allow me to discover a new interest, or new kind of joy. It would lead me to go and talk to that person, that stranger, at a party, at an event, or out and about. It would, that impulsivity and that difficulty almost to stay on task meant I jumped around more, and I was in general more exciting. The conversations with me more exciting. The things I did were more exciting and varied. Yeah, and because of that bouncing around, obviously the same with my emotions. That meant lots of joy, lots going on, literally quite bouncy emotionally. But then I started taking ADHD medication, methylphenidate, and what I found is that massively tapered down. I no longer had that bounciness, as much as that enthusiasm. Instead, it was replaced with a more positivity for the future. I stayed on task. I got things done. I didn't jump around as much. That meant I found it more difficult to transition between things, but the thing that I was doing, I would be wanting to get done, or I'd do more of it, or I'd do it to a more defined degree. It would be, I don't know, not perfect, but more perfect. There'd be more into it. It meant I finished projects. It meant I chased leads in life. It meant when I did have conversations with people, it was easier to listen. But it did mean that conversationally I wasn't as, interesting, if you will. Now, I was on methylphenidate, various different types of methylphenidate product for many years, on and off, different amounts, different strengths, from low to high to low again, to instant release to delayed release, to different types of each, or I think different types of instant release, or I think at least. And I also tried various different types of amphetamine. So whether that be dexamphetamine, or one of the more extended release like Vyvanse, or is it Alvance? Yeah, it could be Alvance or Vyvanse. And they likewise reduce that emotional, affect, as I'm calling it. My emotional expressiveness, my impulsivity, my bounciness, and again, it's more replaced with that ability to stay on task, get things done, more future orientated. So when I looked at or thought about the future, I felt positive, because I felt, I'm going somewhere, things are going to happen, I can achieve my goals. That's what I mean by positivity to the future. I can get stuff done, so I can achieve my goals. I have a future. There is hope there. That's potentially not as exciting as, oh my god, party, thing to do, new person to engage with, oh, this is fun, oh, I've got this new activity to do, oh, I've got this new item. There's a lot of enthusiasm with that, lots of constant stimulation. So when I describe methylphenidate as taking something away, it does take something away, but it replaces it with something that is equally as valuable, even though it's different. And the reason why I changed medication so often and stopped and started it is because that is a big change. Especially when it comes to your personality and how you conduct yourself in life, that's a massive change. That's really hard for anyone. And as I stayed on those medications, I understood that long-term benefit. I needed a future. I needed to generate, work to, survive, to have, a solid foundation, a comfortable future life. And without medication, I was kind of all over the place. So that was not so likely to happen. And many people need medication. They need medication to keep them on task, to help them engage, to help them to survive in this world that is not very suited for their mind. Because you don't actually need medication but maybe you do in this world. And some people take medication because they struggle with their emotions, and ADHD medications do help reduce some of that, and that could be very useful for people at certain points in their life, or maybe during those very turbulent teenage years. So I wasn't trying to say medication is bad. I think medication is a great tool, a tool in a toolkit of things which can help you function, or manage yourself, or move towards the life you want to live. I would say how my relationship with the ADHD medication has changed. At times I've had negative side effects from that. I think they've increased my migraines, but I get a lot of migraines anyway, all the time, so really hard to know. In fact, they may not have at all. I just do get a lot of migraines. I'd say, there is that I'm less enthusiastic, more on task. That can be a challenge socially. So generally, when I have taken them, in more recent time, I'll take them when I'm not like to socialize or go out with other people. In work, sure, fine, I can do that. But also, my personality, that impulsiveness, that bounciness, that adds a flavor to me, which is my part of my charisma. So nowadays, this past year, I've got to be honest, I largely used dexamphetamine, and I largely used, when I say used it, I mean the lowest dose pill, and I split it into quarters, and I mainly used that to taper off, if I'm being honest with you, my hunger. But now I mainly just have coffee. I've developed a love for coffee, and that really massively helps. Because again, with ADHD, and you may hear that I'm using it for hunger, not legitimate use, but where's the source of that hunger? In ADHD, if you're not meeting your sensory needs, that proprioceptive, that need to move your muscles and your body parts in space, as a result of that, you're going to have a harder time focusing, harder time listening, harder time staying on task. You're going to be seeking out potentially more stimulation because you're feeling uncomfortable or unsettled or disconnected from your body, and then you're going to eat more. So when I say I was using it to curb eating, there's also a curb restlessness as well, to allow me to sit at a desk for 8 hours a day, which is intense. Nowadays, things are a bit different. After COVID, we're all moved more to be inside, so I got myself a treadmill and weights, and I have a standing desk, and I tried to structure things to allow me to sit, that also gave me natural amounts of movement. So that helped me have less medication. So again, tools. These are all tools. All those proprioceptive activities I talked about, tools to go alongside the medication. Nowadays, I pretty much never take my ADHD meds. And that's largely because I have a lot of those sensory needs from the ADHD side met in my everyday life. I'm very active, out and about, and I have all the sensory things I mentioned in my apartment. I also have work that has a lot of external motivation, so lots of deadlines, lots of accountability, lots of different people, different conversations, and that adds external motivation. I have a phone conversation with this person, I have a phone conversation with that person, I'm talking to this person, I've been emailed this, I've been sent this form, I have this thing to do, this other thing to do. That's a lot of variation, and that variation helps me, and the fact that there's real humans that are checking up on me, that I'm accountable to, that there's deadlines for these things, it helps me get the job done. Whereas when it came to things like studying or other more generic work, it was a lot harder without that kind of, not even pressure, just lots of little, when I say external motivation, it's not just people, it's actually that my tasks, I know how to break them down into stages. I know how to there's lots of little objectives I meet when it comes to doing a piece of work, and that it means lots of rewards. I've finished this part, or I've finished this part, or I've finished this, and then when I finish that, I have to complete the invoice, which is another part that I've then finished, and I have to email the invoice, but another part that I've finished. And there's lots of little rewards, if you want to look at it that way, for each part of a piece of work that is completed, and every process that's done, from the actual work side to the admin to following the contact. But all these things mean that I now have a life where I mainly do not need medication, and that was always the goal to me. For me, it was to have a future where I could have work that's varied enough to suit my mind, and to have enough of that external motivation to allow me to engage in it. Obviously, I'm aware in my life now that to reach some of my future goals, I do need some form of mentoring, someone to sit down with me at times and go, okay, here's what you want to do. These are the steps. Let's break it down. Let's think of objectives and structures and things for you to tackle. Um, and that was vital for me during college and university, having somebody to do that with me. Without that, I would not have passed through my education. Um, and a lot of people are not so lucky. A lot of people, I've had friends around me that it wasn't until a second year of university that they actually got any kind of help, or they required to go through legal processes to get that kind of help, and still didn't get it, which is a bit madness. I am fortunate in my adult life. I've had business mentoring, and I will look to get more in the future to help me meet my goals. But yeah, my point is, I've tried to structure my life and my work that means that I don't need medication. But medication is still there as a useful tool. If there are periods where I'm struggling to engage, struggling to stay on task, I've got a bigger piece of work to do, I have to go back into some sort of long-term education, for instance, which it's very hard to stay on track for that because it is that more long-worded thing. Not long-worded, it's long in its breadth and its scope. The reward, the goal is far off, and when a reward is so far off, even the mini objectives to get to that goal are not as rewarding and are harder to do. So my ultimate point here is, yes, ADHD medications, any medication, is going to have its side effect. It's going to have its drawbacks, and those drawbacks are positive for some people, they're negative for other people. The ADHD medication for me, it has been great. It's been a useful tool. It's allowed me to get on my feet during periods in which I was not stable. I was not able to function or do much, and I needed it. Nowadays, though, I don't need that medication. I very much work towards a future. It's taken years where I don't need that medication, and maybe it will be part of my future. I don't know. But it's not a negative at all. There are many people where medication, it's extremely helpful, and they will take that potentially forever. And the great thing about a lot of these medications is people have been taking them for 50 years or more, and we know they are quite safe. Some of the more challenges, the scope of what is the dose that's appropriate for someone is extremely wide. I'm just talking about taking a quarter of the lowest pill. For someone else, they're taking, I can't even gather, is the maximum dose like of that particular product like 72, and I'm taking 1. So there's someone else out there that's taking 72 times the amount to get a similar effect, which it seems nuts, but that's the thing. So when you are starting this journey with medication, please know you're going to have to try many different types of medication to get the one that's right for you. You have to try a variety of different doses to get the dose that's right to you. If you're not taking enough, you may be unfocused, jittery, unable to concentrate. If you take too much, you could be jittery, unfocused, unable to concentrate. So sometimes you can think you're not on enough when actually you're on too much. It's a bit like you have 1 cup of coffee and you focus, whereas before you took the coffee, you might be unfocused, but then if you take a 2nd cup of coffee, you're all over the place and you're unfocused again. So medication, it can be a journey to figure out what type of medication in what dose is right, and more so than that, the different types of pill release different amounts at different times in the different graduations. So it maybe require a little bit of experimentation, and if you're on a lower dose as well, it may take you time on that lower dose to see its effects. When I started on methylphenidate, I think for the first 2 months, I thought it was me that was becoming more organized, that was more structured, that I was gradually changing the things around me so that everything was easier. Because it was, on the day to day, I was just doing this little thing here to make it something more efficient, this little thing here to be more efficient. I was getting something slightly more done. Oh, I was slightly easier to make that phone call, slightly easier to reply to that email, until eventually, 2 months in, I couldn't deny that I was getting a lot done. And even though it had been a slow build up where the progress had not really been so noticeable until after those 2 months, it was, and it felt like it was all me. The medication had definitely added that little extra push. So yeah, if you're starting your journey medication, please bear with it, give it a go. Once you've given each one a go, maybe try something else, but be aware that medication isn't the only option. There are many, many other things. And if you need medication right now, but you don't really want to take it long term, you too perhaps can not have to take it forever. I hope this little update helps.